My name is Mark, and I am not entirely human. Rather, I am a human whose brain functions like an anomaly detection engine. I am a lead data analyst at a major cybersecurity firm, and my calling is to find the tiniest stylistic discrepancies across massive data sets. I look for the needle that doesn't even know it's lost. My wife, Emma, was my complete opposite. She was the golden key, charismatic, luminous, and the incredibly successful head of PR at Aurora Communications. Her career was built on confidence, presentations, and the ability to sell any product using a perfect aspirational narrative. While I hunted for truth in code, she manufactured it in words. To Emma, I was a convenient accessory, the quiet, reliable husband who paid the mortgage and could fix any computer. She often joked to her colleagues that my world was too square for her three-dimensional life. Our house was saturated with her ambition. Her desk was always cluttered with folders labeled Client Conversion Metrics and Next Gen Strategy. It was these folders that became my entry point. One evening, I was in our living room and came across Emma's forgotten folder containing her weekly efficiency report. She had promised a client a 30% increase in social media engagement, but the anomaly detection machine in my head fired. I quickly cross-referenced the raw data using open-source tools I had access to. The real figure was 12%. Emma had lied. Not for the first time. But this was the first time it was a criminal level of data falsification that could sink her firm. That same night, the betrayal became real. It happened quietly, without shouting. I accessed her cloud storage to sync photos and found messages with her boss, Peter. In those texts, beyond the intimate details, was a humiliating reference to me. He's so boring. I don't even know what he does. His square charts just bore me. In that moment, the pain of betrayal was replaced by cold, methodological clarity. Emma used lies to build her career. She used lies to betray me. She saw me as a boring tech guy. She didn't realize that the boring tech guy possessed the most powerful weapon in the modern world: truth, derived from data. I decided my revenge wouldn't be an emotion. It would be an algorithm. I went to my home office and switched on my private server. A blank command line window appeared. I started coding. I wasn't going to create an antivirus. I was going to create an AI Inconsistency Detector, a digital weapon trained on everything Emma had ever said or written. I was going to teach a machine to find her lies, and then use her own perfect narrative to destroy her completely. The physical act of separation, moving my things to the guest room, was nothing compared to the digital divorce I was engineering. Emma was oblivious. She was too consumed by her corporate life and her affair to notice the cold, silent war being waged on her data integrity. My revenge required patience and access. Fortunately, as a loving husband and a cynical cybersecurity professional, I had both. For years, Emma had shared her passwords and relied on me for every technical backup. This trust was now my ammunition. My goal was to build the Inconsistency Detector, ID. This wasn't a standard large language model. It was a highly specialized forensic tool designed to analyze two things: narrative style and fact-check discrepancy. First, the narrative training. I systematically fed the ID every piece of her digital life I could legally access. Over 4,000 personal emails, 15,000 texts, 5 years of her professional presentations, and every social media post she ever made. I trained the ID to understand her voice, the specific cadence, the exaggerated vocabulary, and the subtle shifts in language she used when she was selling a fabrication versus stating a simple fact. The ID learned her signature pattern of exaggeration, the difference between "this project is growing rapidly" and "this project grew 12.3% this quarter." Second, the fact-check grid. I linked the ID to every public and verifiable data source related to her work: regulatory filings, public competitor sales figures, historical market trend data, and GPS metadata from her business trips. The ID began classifying her statements. Anything with a high confidence score was green. Anything that couldn't be instantly verified was yellow. But anything where her verbal claims directly contradicted historical or verifiable external data, even by a tiny fraction, was flagged criminal red. The AI became a digital shadow of her entire professional life, capable of instantly correlating her spoken narrative with the inconvenient truth. It confirmed my long-held suspicion. Emma didn't just lie sometimes. Her entire career was a statistically optimized sequence of near truths and systematic exaggeration. The ID was ready. Now I needed to wait for the perfect moment. A moment big enough that the smallest, most pedantic lie could trigger a catastrophic, career-ending failure. I knew that in the world of high-stakes PR, the biggest contracts came with the highest scrutiny. I just had to watch Emma climb high enough to fall the hardest. The opportunity I had been waiting for arrived, predictably, with excessive fanfare and champagne. Emma and her boss, Peter, the man who shared her pillow and her ambition, landed the biggest client pitch in Aurora Communications history: Black Vault Security. Black Vault was not just a client. They were a publicly traded multinational firm specializing in secure data storage, and their CEO, a notoriously meticulous and ruthless man named Mr. Harrington, was famous for his zero-tolerance policy regarding corporate integrity. They were seeking a total PR overhaul to manage a recent minor data breach scandal. The contract was estimated to be worth over $15 million annually. Landing it meant Emma would finally secure the senior partner position she coveted, solidifying her power and wealth. Peter, meanwhile, saw it as his golden ticket to acquiring a smaller rival. Emma was ecstatic. She started spending 18 hours a day at the office, meticulously crafting the perfect narrative. This was where the ID, my inconsistency detector, became truly effective. Because I still managed her home network, I watched as she built her presentations. Her initial proposals were impressive, full of standard PR optimism. But Mr. Harrington of Black Vault had a singular critical demand: data transparency. He required a full audit of all case studies and conversion metrics Aurora Communications used to sell itself. This was Emma's blind spot. To close the deal, she had to fabricate not just one lie, but an entire chain of small, verifiable lies about past client performance to ensure the numbers looked flawlessly exponential. I watched the ID's heat map glow redder and redder as she uploaded the final documents. It wasn't one major lie that was the issue. It was the cumulative weight of dozens of minor systematic exaggerations. A 5% market share increase reported as 10%, a 6-month campaign labeled as 3. My ID summarized its findings. Error confidence, 99.7%. Narrative integrity failure, 47 distinct verifiable inconsistencies identified. Target is vulnerable to forensic audit. The total potential criminal liability for Aurora Communications, should Mr. Harrington ever run a serious cross-check, was astronomical. I realized I didn't need to break into their servers. I just needed to place my small, perfect algorithm in the path of the one person Emma couldn't lie to: Mr. Harrington, the man who demanded absolute data transparency. The final signing ceremony was scheduled for the end of the month. I had 3 weeks to discreetly deploy the truth. The clock was ticking. I had to deliver the ID's findings to Mr. Harrington of Black Vault Security, the only man meticulous enough to understand and act upon them, without leaving a single digital trace back to me. My expertise in cybersecurity was about to become my ultimate shield. I utilized a complex chain of obfuscated VPNs and burner operating systems, routing my connection through 5 different continents. My destination: Black Vault's anonymous vendor compliance portal. This was a hidden digital Dropbox where potential partners could submit warnings or evidence of malfeasance about firms seeking contracts. My submission wasn't a rant or an accusation. It was a single, highly professional 10-page document generated by the ID titled Comparative Analysis of Aurora Communications Public-Facing Metrics versus Regulatory Filings. The report was pure data, devoid of emotion or personal commentary. It didn't mention Emma or Peter by name. It simply presented the hard, cold facts. Section 1. The trend discrepancy. A side-by-side graph showing Aurora's claimed client growth versus the verifiable lower growth figures reported to the SEC. Section 2. The timeline compression. Proof that a successful 18-month campaign was consistently marketed to new clients as a 6-month success story, effectively inflating their efficiency metrics. Section 3. The cumulative error. A final summary demonstrating that the aggregate of these small, systematic exaggerations constituted a massive, deliberate misrepresentation of their service capabilities. The ID's output was designed to be instantly credible. It used the professional terminology of a meticulous auditor, not a scorned husband. It was a digital Trojan horse. An apparently helpful, compliance-focused report dropped right into the client's lap, ensuring Mr. Harrington's team would be legally obligated to investigate before signing the $15 million contract. I hit send. The digital echo faded instantly. I deleted the burner OS and wiped the drive clean. No one, not even the sharpest forensic team, could trace that submission back to my IP address. 2 days later, the air in our apartment felt different. Emma was frantic. She was on the phone, her voice tight, whispering about unexpected compliance roadblocks. She had no idea the roadblock was a document I had created, now sitting on Mr. Harrington's desk, proving her entire professional persona was a systemic lie. The trap was sprung. The submission was a tactical masterstroke. Mr. Harrington, true to form, didn't panic. He simply paused the $15 million contract signing and, without warning, hired an external audit firm known for their discretion and brutality. Blackwood and Associates. Their job was not to find who sent the report, but to verify its claims. The fallout at Aurora Communications was immediate and volcanic. Emma's boss and lover, Peter, initially dismissed the anonymous report as corporate espionage. But when Blackwood and Associates demanded access to their internal client data, specifically the raw metrics for the case studies Emma had presented, panic set in. "This is insane, Mark," Emma hissed at me one evening, too stressed to notice the irony of confiding in the husband she betrayed. "Harrington is demanding raw data from 3 years ago. We can't pull that. The numbers don't match the presentations, and Peter is freaking out." She was right. The numbers didn't match. Emma's method of operation was to exaggerate slightly, then delete the raw data, assuming the perfect narrative was all that mattered. She never anticipated an auditor would use her public statements to cross-reference years of defunct filing data. She built her career on the assumption that nobody would care enough to check the math. Peter tried to manage the crisis with bluster, but Blackwood and Associates were relentless. They confirmed that the cumulative error identified in the anonymous report was real, meaning Aurora Communications had been systematically deceiving potential clients for years. This wasn't a mistake. It was a clear pattern of fraudulent misrepresentation. The situation escalated. The Black Vault contract was officially canceled. Mr. Harrington didn't just walk away. He issued a public statement citing serious and systemic integrity concerns at Aurora Communications. This statement sent a seismic shockwave through the entire PR industry. Emma and Peter's affair, previously a secret indulgence, now became a toxic, high-pressure professional partnership rapidly crumbling under the weight of an external investigation. Their whispers in the hallway were no longer about romantic rendezvous, but desperate attempts to locate the leak and cover the paper trail. A paper trail that, thanks to my AI, was now a 6-lane highway leading directly to Emma's meticulously fabricated career. The cancellation of the Black Vault contract was a disaster, but the public statement from Mr. Harrington was a catastrophe. Aurora Communications stock dipped, and confidence evaporated. The board of directors, desperate to save the firm from a cascade of client losses and potential lawsuits, needed a villain. And Peter, the CEO, was very good at pointing fingers. Peter's relationship with Emma was a liability. The board knew they were involved. Now they were simply seeking to leverage that relationship to protect the company's senior leadership. Peter made a crucial, cold-hearted decision. Emma would be the fall guy. He called an emergency meeting where he publicly presented Emma's meticulous but fraudulent sales metrics. He argued, with tears in his eyes, I'm sure, that Emma, driven by an overzealous pursuit of promotion, had independently fabricated the key performance indicators, KPIs, and hidden the raw data, thereby misleading him and the entire firm. The logic was chillingly effective. Emma's success was highly visible, meaning her failure would be equally public. She was the one who personally presented the most egregious fabrications. When Emma defended herself, claiming Peter knew about the true metrics, Peter simply produced documents I had seen before. Internal memos where he had seemingly cautioned her about exaggeration. It was a beautiful piece of corporate theater. I, watching from the periphery, saw the truth. Peter had always encouraged her lies, but he had legally shielded himself by sending a handful of carefully worded performative emails to Emma, creating an invisible, deniable buffer. Emma was formally terminated. The official reason: gross negligence and systematic data fraud for personal gain. She wasn't just fired. She was publicly discredited as a liar and a cheat by the man she had risked everything for. She left the building not as the rising senior partner, but as the toxic professional who had nearly destroyed the firm. I watched her walk through the front door of our apartment that evening. She was pale, shaking, and utterly defeated. She saw me, the quiet, boring tech guy, sitting calmly, reviewing my own clean, verifiable data. "They ruined me, Mark," she whispered, her voice cracking. "Peter set me up." I simply nodded, my face impassive. "Compliance is important, Emma," I said softly, using the dry, technical tone she despised. "You ignored the math." The next morning, Emma was packing. Not her corporate suits, but her personal belongings. She was moving out, claiming she needed space to process the betrayal of Peter. She still didn't connect the threads: the anonymous compliance report and her quiet, tech-savvy husband. I watched her stack her boxes of self-help books and PR awards. The irony was suffocating. "You know, Mark," she said without looking up, "the worst part is that some anonymous source dropped the first report. A full professional audit summary. It was flawless. It was like whoever wrote it knew exactly where all my weak spots were." I set down my coffee mug, taking a slow, measured sip. I walked over to the desk, opened my laptop, and pulled up the command line window. The screen was filled with the green text of the Inconsistency Detector code, confirming her 99.7% narrative failure rate. I turned the screen toward her. "It wasn't an anonymous source, Emma." My voice was calm, almost monotonous, the exact tone she always found so dull. "It was me." She froze, staring at the screen. Her disbelief was immediate, quickly followed by hysterical anger. "You? You couldn't have. You don't care about compliance reports. You're just a numbers guy." "Exactly," I affirmed. "I'm the numbers guy. When I found out about Peter, I didn't scream or break things. I did what I do best. I treated your entire professional life as a data set that required forensic auditing." I explained how I trained the ID, how I cataloged her stylistic lies, how I cross-referenced her public claims with private data, and how I generated the 10-page report that forced Blackwood and Associates to audit her. "I didn't break a single law, Emma," I continued, leaning in close. "I simply gathered the truth you worked so hard to bury. Peter betrayed you romantically, but you were already professionally doomed by your own system of lies." I just hit the submit button. The realization hit her like a physical blow. Her career hadn't been ruined by a rival or an audit. It had been dismantled by the methodical, calculated expertise of the man she saw as a background character. But the final, crushing blow was yet to come. I pulled out a simple, sealed envelope, a document from my lawyer. "This is the final statement, Emma. Because your termination was for gross data fraud, a clear violation of the prenuptial agreement you insisted upon, the financial settlement is now null and void. You get nothing. No alimony, no division of assets. You leave with exactly what your professional integrity is worth: zero." Her face went pale, realizing the depth of my revenge. It wasn't just her career that was gone. It was the financial safety net she had always taken for granted. The boring tech guy had just executed the perfect, clean, and irreversible professional and financial termination. Emma left that afternoon. The dramatic exit I might have anticipated, screaming, threats, or a physical confrontation, never happened. She was simply inert, a narrative machine that had run out of fuel. She understood, finally, the difference between charisma and compliance. She had wagered everything on the belief that charm could perpetually override data, and she lost. I watched her load the last box into a box filled with corporate awards and framed certificates of achievement. They were symbols of the career she built on lies, now rendered worthless by a single 10-page data report. The irony was a clean, sharp blade. The outcome of my revenge was perfect in its sterility. I didn't have to resort to violence, vandalism, or public shouting. My weapon was simply truth, meticulously extracted and delivered by cold logic. My quiet satisfaction wasn't fueled by rage. It was driven by the deep structural fulfillment of watching a system, the legal and financial market, perform its intended unforgiving function, regardless of personal sentiment. In the ensuing months, Peter, facing intense scrutiny from the board after the scandal he orchestrated, was also summarily forced out. The failure of the Black Vault deal, combined with the continuous fear of more anonymous reports, the board had no idea the source was neutralized, severely destabilized the company. Aurora Communications lost over 40% of its market capitalization and was eventually acquired by a rival firm at a massive, humiliating discount. Peter's golden ticket turned into financial ruin, amplified by his public discrediting. I, the boring data guy, returned to my quiet life. I retained my job, my home, and my expertise, which was now more valuable than ever, having passed the ultimate ethical, or rather unethical, stress test. My peace was purchased not with anger, but with precision and intellectual dominance. Emma's fate was the true reward. She attempted to rebuild her career, but in the highly interconnected world of PR, the Aurora scandal became her permanent digital footprint. Every new job application, every presentation, every word she uttered was now scrutinized. Prospective employers weren't just running background checks. They were using sophisticated metrics tools of their own. She was trapped in a world where the slightest historical lie was easily exposed. She became her own worst enemy. I often sit in my office watching the clean, green lines of code on my screen. I realize that true power isn't in manipulation or charisma. It's in understanding the system well enough to make it perform its intended function, regardless of who gets hurt. I think about the inconsistency detector. I never deleted the core program. It remains dormant on my server, a reminder, a trophy, and perhaps a potential tool for future vigilance. My former wife found out the hard way. You cannot win a war against a man who treats your life as a data set, and you certainly cannot outrun an algorithm that knows your lies better than you do. The clean data finally won.